Thanks for the invitation. Before I start, I'd like to mention that I'm just one part of the research team which has been working on that pilot project I'll tell you the next 20 minutes about. So I'm very happy having the possibility to share with you some of the main outcomes of that pilot study and of course some of the most urgent questions we are having at the moment. So, as you might have recognized, the title of the announcement in the program differs from the one you see on the paper we've sent in. This just mirrors the work in progress we are currently in. After evaluating the pilot study, we are working on a research application for a big study at the moment. There were a lot of promising findings, but also, of course, some challenges, so that we need to rethink methods, instruments of evaluation, and research priorities, which resulted, among other things, in a changed title of the project. So before I'm going to summarize our pilot project, its research design, and some interesting findings, I'd like to tell you some of the context in which we are locating our study. Great challenges currently lie ahead of us when it comes to the question how to convey the Holocaust in schools. New structures of providing the topic have to be created because the learning environment changed. The amount of media and materials on the Holocaust are growing strongly. New sources are found and made publicly available. New presentations are written and new media genres are created. Video testimonies are luckily a big issue, but the way they are presented is shifting. Formerly, witnesses told their story in films on TV, then also on tablets from an app, and newly they are even present in class in the form of holographic videos in 3D format. Furthermore, the didactical demands for conveying the Holocaust have increased, and of course not only as regards this topic. The professionalization of didactics has resulted in a number of new findings regarding teaching and learning. What is required is a competence-oriented teaching which both supports and fosters students so that new knowledge and skills can be acquired and new opinions and attitudes built. This should be archived by an internally differentiated way which allows all learners to learn according to their own pathways with their own focuses so that in fact individual identity development takes place in each case also. These and of course other not mentioned here great changes demand new forms of how to convey the Holocaust. The development of teaching materials as well as the teaching practice have reacted to these demands in the last few years and have, for example, provided a great number of videotape eyewitness interviews for conveying the Holocaust and have included them into teaching. Nowadays, innumerable films and interviews with people of those times are available, and they are also partly didactically prepared. However, so far, there are no firm findings about whether or how these videotape witnesses impact effective learning processes, which brought us to the project's core question, namely, how to do video testimonies in a digital learning environment affect learning processes of students in school. Therefore, researchers from 5 different institutions have dealt with these questions and launched a pilot project in order to find out how this historical learning, stimulated by videotaped witnesses and taking place in regular history teaching in schools in Germany, Austria and Switzerland. These findings should give hints as to how such videos and the learning offers based on them have to be designed so that this offer provides the greatest possible benefits to learners. So let's come to the pilot study's research design. Once we picked the tablet as the digital education tool, an application was developed, as you can see here. This included video testimonies of 3 witnesses, some background information, work instructions for the students, and questionnaires. Each student worked on his and or her own tablet. The heart of the project was the teaching sequence Meeting Witness of the Holocaust, which lasted 90 minutes. It was held in schools of all 3 participating countries. The classes differed in their aspiration level and the students in their socio-economic backgrounds. All in all, 74 students with an average age of 16.7 experienced that double history lesson. So in the very first step, you can see it here on the picture, the teacher explained the topic, so the what, the procedure, the how, and purpose, the why. Afterwards, the students were invited to use the quadrangles method, which means that they were asked to stand close to one of those statements about the Holocaust, which were put into the classroom by the teacher before the lesson. After positioning themselves, the students discussed with each other why they chose which position. Then the main part of the project, namely the 50-minute work with tablets, started. The students could choose between 3 videos, all stories with emphasis on different themes, as you might have read in the paper, which were escape, survive, and resist. So the students were asked to solve 3 tasks. First, to watch the entire interviews and write down spontaneous thoughts, impressions, or feelings when seeing and hearing the videos. Second, to select a quote out of the scene interview, which was most crucial to the student. And then third step, to write a short summary of the interview. So after this sequence, the students went out for a short break. The last 20 minutes they were discussing in plenary. And at the end, they were asked again to stand next to one of the statements from the beginning. So let's have a look at the data we collected. All in all, the classroom intervention was analyzed with 5 data collections, as you can see here. There was questionnaire 1 on the very left. That was one week before, and this one was asking the students about their ideas of the Holocaust, the opinion about witnesses, and their experiences with tablets. Then, during the intervention, there were 2 different data collected. So first, the video documentation of the lesson, and second, the user behavior of the students via a tracking software. Immediately after the lesson, questionnaire 2 asked about the learning experiences of the students. And about 2 weeks later, so 2 weeks after the lesson, questionnaire 3 asked the same questions as questionnaire 1 did, so that we had there a nice comparison. So how could the generated data be used for answering our core question? History teaching serves, of course, the purpose of making the students learn historically. This means that the students' knowledge, abilities, opinions, attitudes, etc. are changing, which can be summed up as competence. Also, subject-related interests and motivations are part of those competences. Historical learning and competence acquisition can be described with different models. Independent of the used model, the building of narrative competence stands at the very core of history teaching. So at the heart, it is about the students being able to understand historical accounts and to develop historical narratives themselves. They did this most intensively in the teaching sequence described by summarizing the interviews which they have studied. Some of them start on their summary by characterizing their growth of knowledge. Others focused on the history of events at a micro level or also at a macro level. According to Peter Gauci's model of guter Geschichtsunterricht, good history teaching, also other competences like reflecting and interpreting were stimulated. But how did the students experience that history lesson? Let's have a look on this table, which gives us an insight into the student's perspective. So here you can see questionnaire 2 with the closed questions. You can see the questions on the left. So there were questions like, did you understand the content of the history lesson, more or less good? How much are you satisfied with your learning outcomes, etc. So when we look at the table, everything which goes over for a value of 4.0 is regarded as good history teaching. And the mean here was 4.98, which was a very good value then. And also in the open questions, they were like, so the students were asked to write their own thinking about special things, and they were like, we can summarize this as development of opinions. So there was, yeah, things like I recognize how extremely bad Nazis were, and about reflection, which is much more important, in my opinion. Like, I'm very glad to live in an open-minded society. So in summary, it can be said that in the double lesson meeting witnesses of the Holocaust, the students were guided to go through a complete learning process, which requires narrative competence from them in many facets, but also fosters their narrative competence and thus provides a good opportunity for historical learning. So let's come to another point. How did the students experience the work with the tablets? Generally speaking, and maybe this is not that surprising, the students appreciated the work with the tablets, which clearly emerged from the results of questionnaire 3. So there was a positive evaluation of the tablet as working tool. Students found the learning with the tablet very clear and efficient. They found it exciting, and they said, and this is quite important for school, learning was fun. So it also had positive effects on the working atmosphere. It was a very calm, a very concentrated atmosphere in the class. So this whole setting made fluent and targeted work possible and allowed an individual learning process. And of course, additional individual learning pace. But there were also some problems when we look at the technical points, so with the handling of the tablet, so students are not that used to work on tablets. There were some difficulties when it came to write and read on the tablet, so yeah, there are some things we have to improve. But as we could have seen, the students took advantage of the scope, so here it is also interesting who chose which video. Lizzie Pressel, so these are the 3 videos, you might have read about that in the paper, with different motifs or with the core themes. So Lizzie Pressel, whose account served as an escape story, was chosen most often in one class in Switzerland, but never in the other Swiss class. In contrast, the German students in the first place chose the account of Eugen Hermann Friede, who was a member of the resistance against the Nazis. The Austrian students showed most interest for Agnes Weiss-Ballasch, who survived Auschwitz. So looking closely at the distribution of the chosen witness interviews across all 3 countries, the following figures were derived. Lizzie Pressel was chosen 21 times, Eugen Hermann Friede 25 times, and Agnes Weiss-Ballasch 28 times. So students were actually most interested in the surviving theme. But not only considerable differences became apparent when it comes to the what as regards the use of the teaching sequence, but also when it comes to the how. The tablet app was programmed usage behavior with so-called log files. This allowed to collect data about commands such as play, pause, forward, seek, etc. And with the help of that, different patterns of usage could be identified. So here you can see an exemplary user behavior. So it's like pressing pause, going further for a minute, pressing play, going further for a minute, pressing pause, then going back. And it's just an exemplary user behavior. So it became apparent that girls gave clearly more commands than boys. So there were some gender patterns visible. They more often made a pause, they saw things more often, and therefore also pressed the play button more often. So since the tablets were assigned, so these were the patterns of the user groups. Since the tablets are assigned to the students individually with a code which was also used when collecting other data, the different data sources can be linked. Of interest, in particular, also for the development of tablet apps and in general for learning environments, is the question as to whether there are relationships between the characteristic patterns of usage and the assessment of the teaching offers and the knowledge gain of the students. Here it, for example, became apparent that increased interaction with the video went along with better understanding, but that dealing with a video for longer triggered less concernment. So it can be said that great individual differences are revealed as regards user behavior. What the influencing factors of this user behavior in fact are can only be assumed to a certain extent on the basis of the so far collected data. Obviously, the gender plays a role. One is to assume that the personality characteristics or the instructions by the teacher have an influence as well. It would also be conceivable that knowledge of and attitudes towards the Holocaust as well as experiences in dealing with witnesses or with tables mark the user behavior. On these 3 last aspects, the learner were questioned a week ahead of the execution of the double lesson and 2 weeks afterwards, which brings us to some problematic aspects. So these are some quite interesting findings, but some data didn't change significantly or showed enough potential to make them useful for our core question, especially when it comes to the students' attitudes and images about the Holocaust. Hardly any changes could be noticed between questionnaires 1 and 3. This. So that brings us back to the beginning of my presentation. Since we've been evaluating the pilot study's results, we are thinking about some important shifts we need to deal with. So these are mainly that we have to conduct more qualitative data, which means we have to improve the measure and evaluation instruments. We are also thinking about comparing the benefits of video testimonies to other sources which are used in history class, like ego documents, documentaries about the Holocaust, etc. A third point is that we might focus on one theme when it comes to the choice of the videos to strengthen the narratives and reflections of the students. So escape would be thinkable because it's, of course, more than topical. So we also could compare tablets with both conventional learning tools and other digital media tools like smartboards, which are more for, it's not for individual learning process, but more for a collective learning process, to figure out more about individual and collective learning processes. So therefore we need more settings, and we also need to include education delegates, especially when it comes to the relevance of the Holocaust in history class and the use of digital education media. So I formulated those things as statements, yeah, it's actually more about questions, as you might have recognized at the moment. So I'm very looking forward, especially to the colleagues from the current and the last course, and maybe the colleague for the quantitative data, for questions and recommendations and critics and remarks to help us to improve our research design to make those things happen. Thanks for your attention.